Hi guys, it's Ness. Sorry for the lack of uploads. It was literally 120 degrees in my house. We didn't have AC, and then I'm sick. You can probably hear that in my voice, so bear with me. I'm sorry. You're gonna hear a lot of cracking. I'm gonna sound like a 13-year-old boy, but we're gonna power through this. This time, I'm reviewing The Stepfather. What are you doing, Stepfather? Anyway, this movie was made in 1987 and it embraces the 1980s to its full. It's pretty much a dark, dynamic mockery of the American dream and all of its flaws. If those flaws were the husband you marry now wants to kill you and all of your children. Anyway, let's hop into the movie. We open this lovely film with our main character, Jerry, or at least he calls himself Jerry in this new life. I don't remember what his name was before this, whatever. Who is in the process of going through a glow up. We see him leave for the day, and as he comes down the stairs, we see his entire family is murdered in the living room. And I mean, the entire family is murdered in the living room, and the effects are just they're just awful. I mean, there's a girl on the floor, and she looks like someone just squirted ketchup on her back. Anyway, he just waltzes out of the house and leaves for the day as if nothing has happened. And, the neighbors see him and everything. But, you mean to tell me that, with a murder like this, no one heard anything, no one saw anything, no one screamed, no one came to check on them whatsoever? I mean, it's the 80s where people didn't have Facebook to distract them every day. What else were they doing, other than spying on their neighbors? I just assumed that's what people did in the 1980s, but I guess not. I guess everyone's just ignoring each other just like they do now. One might assume that, at least a single person saw something as this man literally walks away from a mass murder, but, he didn't, no one saw anything. So, we go through a time lapse, and it's been a year later, and we're introduced to our new family. Stephanie, the daughter, and her mother, Susan, who's married to the killer in the beginning, Jerry. And we get a bunch of awkward scenes of Jerry trying to win Stephanie's approval, and it's very obvious that Stephanie's dad passed away, and she clearly doesn't, see Jerry as, somebody that she looks up to. She thinks something's off with him, very, typical daughter with stepdad behavior, nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, she would obviously be right in this scenario, but I mean, who doesn't usually originally reject their step parent at first? It makes a lot of sense. I do like the dynamic of the characters and how they organize them in this way that, clearly she thought something was up with him, but not necessarily because there actually was something up with him, simply just because she was rejecting the fact that there'd be a new father character in her life, which I liked. We end up at Stephanie's therapist's office, where he discusses that she's been struggling with school and she needs to accept the fact that her father's dead. She claims it's all because of her new stepfather and that he doesn't belong in their family and that he should leave, as if that's the reason she's failing school. Stephanie is being a standard pouty teenager, and she argues with her dad about doing well in school. The next day at school, Stephanie does not listen to her father or her therapist, and she gets into a fight at school. In the art room of all places. The 80s, a time before the school system stopped funding art programs. She finds out she's been expelled, and her father reacts very calmly to this and insists that he'll fix the problem. I definitely want to highlight how much I really enjoy the family dynamic of this film. I mean, I think that the acting is great, and you can almost relate to Jerry the killer because we've yet to see him snap, even though we know that he's capable of murdering people. You haven't seen him behave in any way out of the ordinary. It's almost if you want to believe that he's changed and this is real. He really does give off the vibe for sure that this is genuine, and I find it to be a very skilled form of acting to be able to play two parts, so to speak, the killer and the calm family man, similar to, something that you'd see in Breaking Bad. We find ourselves following some police officers who are just randomly now being introduced, who apparently are investigating this case of Jerry's previous murdered family. Both officers have New York accents for some reason, despite this movie taking place in northern Washington, apparently. I don't know. I don't really know what they were going for here. But now we know that police are coming for him, but we don't really know how close they are to his case. Jerry's family is now throwing a party. No idea what for, but it's the 80s, so party it up. Later on during the party, someone mentions a newspaper article that states it's the 1-year anniversary to the family being murdered. The family that, he was in, and the murder that, he committed. He immediately snaps and says he won't read anything about that and hates to think about anyone doing that to a family. Stephanie watches him go off, and later we see her walking down to the basement. She hears Jerry almost having an episodic fit, talking to himself, almost answering himself as if there were multiple people talking in the room. This definitely stands now more towards the dynamic of the character, as if maybe he has multiple personalities and they conflict, take over one another whenever he's in a state of stress. She stands and just waits until he sees her. He laughs and brushes it off as if it's nothing, says adults just need to blow off steam sometimes. Yep, schizophrenic rambling tendencies, just, I do those to let off steam, After Stephanie witnesses this, she gets it in her head that Jerry is the murderer. I don't really know where, she made that, that leap of the newspaper article about a family dying and Jerry killing that family. She might be correct, but never once do I actually, see a valid reason for her to believe this to be true. She's speaking with her friend the next day, and she says she's going to write the paper and ask for a picture of the man they believe murdered his family and never got caught, I guess to prove that it's Jerry. Jerry, later in the week, I'm assuming, because the Postal Service wouldn't respond that fast, he finds the letter from the post, the one that contains the picture. He has a pretty much mental breakdown rage in the basement and believes that Stephanie is now on to him, and he must make a plan to cover his tracks. I mean, in reality, he could have just thrown out the mail. You don't know that the post would have responded to this teenage girl about asking about murderers. You don't know that, so you could just you could throw away the letter. Whatever. In the middle of this episode, Stephanie's therapist calls the house and asks if he can meet with Jerry to talk about Stephanie. Jerry declines and refuses to speak with him. So the therapist makes a plan to call Jerry at work. As a real estate agent, Jerry would obviously meet with a prospective client. And, Stephanie's therapist lies about who he is, and he says he's wishing to look at a house. And, of course, Jerry accepts, and this is all a master plan for the therapist to meet with Jerry. In between these scenes, Stephanie opens up the mail to find the letter from the post with the killer's picture in it. And surprise, surprise, Jerry has since swapped the photos and it's a picture of somebody else entirely. So obviously this isn't Jerry, and Stephanie has now put that in the back of her brain, even though there's really no reason she should have assumed he was the killer to begin with. But, and I mean, Jerry going through that effort of swapping the pictures, I mean, that was kind of a ridiculous plan at the end of the day. I mean, he still could have just thrown away the picture, but, I guess I respect the grind, man. I respect the grind of a mass murderer, I suppose. She's, for some reason, I guess, disappointed to find out that her stepfather isn't a mass murderer, even though he is, but, she believes that he's not. So, I don't really know why finding out that your stepfather wasn't a murderer would be a bad thing, but whatever. We cut back to Jerry meeting with the therapist, who is disguised as a possible homeowner. They walk around the house, which looks absolutely dusty as hell. It's just does no one clean these homes? It looks a little weird, a little shady. And the therapist asks him about his family, and for some reason, this just sets him off. I mean, is it normal for a methodical serial killer to just be set off about the concept of a family? Little strange. Jerry simply snaps and beats him over the head with a wooden board. And I mean, to be quite honest, the strength required to beat someone over the head with a wooden board and actually kill them is really hard. And it doesn't even look like he really hits the guy that hard. He just kind of like knocks him on the head, and apparently that just like, smushes the man's brains in. But anyway, he discovers the person he killed is really his daughter's therapist and panics. So did you think you were just killing some random guy and you were okay with killing this random person, and now the fact that you know this person and it has a link to your life, it's now panicking? Like, did you just want to kill this random guy that asked you about your family? It's kind of weird, to be honest. It seems like he's a very methodical killer that just kills his family, but apparently he's losing it. He's losing it, man. He rolls him up in this weird carpet paper, and the room is just strangely not full of blood, despite him beating a man's head in it. So that's kind of, I guess that's cool for him. No cleanup, I guess. And then there's this ridiculous scene of him staging a car crash by rolling the doctor's car off a cliff into a fiery explosion. Man, it must have been so easy to be a killer in the 1980s. I mean, like, no DNA, no finding out that man was beaten to death instead of dying in a car crash. Just none of it. Like, man, I was born in the wrong generation, am I right? We cut back to our New York sounding policeman, and he's back at the old crime scene where Jerry killed his family in the beginning. We find a used magazine with missing pages in the basement that, the police never took into evidence the first time around. I'm telling you, the 80s was a great time to kill people. The policeman rushes to the library to discover the missing pieces were a print of the best places to raise a family. Get it? 'Cause the killer wants to kill his whole family. Oh my God, Lord, this movie just knows how to make a fucking plot, am I right? Also, it says Oak Ridge, Washington, which isn't an actual place. I know, I'm from Washington, but based on the location it describes stating around there, when the cops estimated where he would have headed, that guesstimate was pretty dead on. But why would you murder your entire family to then maybe only move an hour away? Like, we saw how he changes his look and identity, but like, it's still just an hour away. Like, if you should move across the entire country, you should be in Mexico by now, dude. An hour away, man, like, it's a ferry ride. He killed his family, hopped on a ferry, and just decided to have a new life. Like, that's insane. Whatever. Like, that's, I'm telling you, it's a great time to be a serial killer in the 80s, man. No one's paying attention to anything. Okay, we're gonna get back to the movie now. Anyway, Stephanie goes on a date, and when he drops her off, Jerry absolutely wigs out that she was with a boy. After this moment, he decides he doesn't want his family anymore, and in the morning, he quits his job and starts moving on to build a new life and identity, planning to kill his old family now. We now have a copulation of the cop man walking around door to door, most likely looking for Jerry. We don't really see how he got this list. Was it just men who fit that description? The moving time? I don't know. Jerry is on a montage of starting his new life as a new man. He looks actually very different, surprisingly. I dig it. And, very lovely bones look you have there, Jerry. And his wife, oh no! She finds out that he quit his job. I don't really know what he would expect if, you have a wife and, she doesn't have a job or anything. You think she might look into your shit sometimes. I don't know. He comes home and she confronts him about this, and he makes up a reasonable lie that it was a mix-up at the office, and then he just snaps. He forgets his name, who he is, and he decides then and there is now the time to begin to murder his family. Kind of a big throw on his part, considering he didn't really plan this through very well. So he throws his not dead wife in the basement after he beat her over the head. I don't know if he was just saving her for later, or he assumed that fall into the basement would kill her, but it didn't. So what's stopping her right here from, breaking a window and running out of the basement and calling the cops? But, she doesn't do that, I guess. I guess she's just, she's a little too strung up by the fact that her husband's killing her, The cop man shows up now, completely unprepared. And apparently he wasn't properly taught how to clear a room, so, you don't technically get spawn camped, you get taught how to clear a room. I guess how to clean a room, too. But anyway, Jerry's waiting for him behind the door, and he just lets Jerry walk up to him and stab him. He doesn't, he has a gun, and, he didn't know back up and shoot Jerry, He literally just lets Jerry slowly walk up and stab him, kill him, and then he's just dead. So his entire plot to this whole thing was completely pointless. Jerry doesn't take the gun, which is, dumb. And he just goes upstairs to kill his daughter who's in the shower. She panics and stabs him in the shoulder and runs. Why didn't you stab him in the throat, girl? What the hell? There's a very prolonged fight scene before they all have a square off, and the mother finally grabs the gun and shoots Jerry dead. Honestly, this guy's a pretty shit killer. I'm pretty sure he's only gotten away with this because of 80's police work. Like, his previous family must have just had no will to live. I mean, we saw them. They were all just, in the living room, scattered around, just like the police officer. They just simply stared at him while he walked up and stabbed them multiple times. It's everyone just sat around and watched, I guess. Anyway, he's an awful killer, and he deserves what he got entirely. Overall, I did actually really enjoy the movie, though. I really liked the aesthetic of the 80s. That's always great. I love a good 80s movie. But I also really did like him as a character. I think he played the part very well. I really think they could have done a better job formulating a plot of, him actually methodically killing these people. It seems really like he was just going on killing sprees, and the police just didn't care. So if that was what they were going for, A+. But if that wasn't what you were going for, that's a problem. Anyway, I know this movie's been remade several times, but the 1987 version of it is pretty good in my opinion, so give it a check out. It's on Shudder if you want to see it. Alright guys, it's the end of the video, and this is the time where I beg you to sub. If you've made it this far, I estimate that you probably want to subscribe to my channel. I usually put out new videos every week, and I'm trying to think of new ideas, new movies, new shows to review, so if you have an idea, please let me know, and I will put it on my list to review it. Anyway, so see you guys soon. Bye.